Good evening and welcome to Thursdays with NAMI. My name is Peg Morrison. I'll be your host tonight. I am the Assistant Director for NAMI North Carolina. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, North Carolina. I'm glad y'all are here. Thursdays with NAMI is our way of building conversations and building community on the topic of mental health. Tonight's guest is Erica Blumfield. The first time I heard her speak was at a storytelling event, and every word she spoke just came to life and resonated. She lived in New York City for a time. She was homeless. She lived with bipolar disorder. And eventually she found her way and became this engaging speaker. Her style includes humor and straight talk, and I'm so glad to have her here with us tonight. We'll be talking with Erica in just a moment. As usual, the first part of our show will be an interview with our guest. Partway through, we'll show a video of the week, and then we'll spend time answering questions from you, members of our virtual studio audience on Zoom and Facebook. Now, first, a word from our sponsors. Thursdays with NAMI is funded in part by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services, through the Federal Community Mental Health Block Grant Fund. We appreciate their guidance and their support so much. And welcome, Erica. We'll get right down to it now.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. And we always like to start out with sort of the backstory of our guests, what brought you here tonight. So tell us your story in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, currently I'm a teacher and a storyteller, but what brought me here tonight was I've had a long journey with being able to manage my bipolar disorder, and have had some fantastic experiences that has really helped keep me strong. And you did mention my personal philosophy, maybe. My personal philosophy, well, I cherish my friends, cherish your friends, and life is bound to throw punches, so keep up the good fight.
That's right. Fight the good fight. I like it. So you studied at New York University. You graduated from there and pursued your dreams in New York City for a time. Tell us about that era of your life.
Sure. I went to NYU and I attended the Gallatin School there, and it's called the Gallatin School of Individualized Study, and you design your own curriculum. So it was amazing. It was interdisciplinarian. So you would read philosophy and psychology and literature all around a theme like belief and skepticism. And I love books and I love learning. So it was very enriching. And I also worked at this amazing cafe called Cafe 107. It was in the East Village, and it was a quaint place, like the type of place you'd see off the beaten path in Florence. And it had it was amazing. It had a theater across the street called the Variety Arts Theater. And so we'd get the actors in, and I became really like close with Valerie Harper, and
Wow.
Liza Minnelli was there sometimes. And I served Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman hot chocolate with whipped cream. And then all the while I was attending school, and then after auditioning and writing and being in productions here and there and having my readings of my writing. And yeah, it was fantastic. I'm really grateful that I had that part of my life.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like you've met some really glamorous people. Exciting. Yeah. Huh. So then things took a turn and got a lot tougher, it sounds like. How did you become homeless?
Well, I was living with my boyfriend at the time, and things had been going well. You know, I had gone to school, I was working full time, I was acting and writing. And then my mental health started declining. Things weren't quite working out as well as I had hoped with my career. Things had become stagnant, and My boyfriend was a musician, and we spent a lot of late nights out, which sleep is really important for keeping me stable. So, and we were drinking a lot of whiskey, and it was just, I started having like episodes where I would have a deep depression, but then it's go up on the upswing, and I'd have a mania, or it kept increasing. And so I lost my job. My boyfriend broke up with me because he didn't understand, he didn't understand what was going on. And I lost I ran out of money, and then I was evicted from my apartment. And I had nothing left. So I had to go back to my parents' house, which was a very volatile environment. They didn't have the tools to,
Okay.
yeah, they didn't have the tools to help really, because they didn't understand the illness, and it was very dramatic and too hard for them. And so then a friend invited me to come stay with her in Los Angeles. Like, she didn't fully know like how sick I was. And then I ended up there. And then I I was having episodes, so she took me to the hospital, and I was committed to UCLA. And then after that, there was nowhere for me to go. So I went to a halfway house for the homeless while we tried to find me somewhere longer term to live. And I didn't want to stay there. I was very scared. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced, but mostly any, what I imagined for my life. It was so, yeah. So it was like, whoa. But I was also in and out of reality. So sometimes, so yeah. And so then I lived there. I was lucky because I tried to leave a lot, and they would sit me down and explain like what Skid Row was like, and how fortunate I was to have a roof over my head. And they were right. They were right.
Well, I'm so glad that they communicated with you in that way instead of saying, okay, there she goes.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. And you made a comment about expectations. You were afraid and didn't feel like your life was in line with what you had thought it would be. And of course, I live with depression, anxiety, and some things too. And I think that was the hardest thing, was that acceptance that, my life feels very off track. This was never the plan. And just letting go of those old expectations, because it's not really how life works, is it?
It does
Uh,
not. Yes.
yeah, the fun we have. Um, so then, so you moved to LA, um, and you found some good care there. And you did a lot of work in recovery. You've got some other wonderful online appearances. And one of them, I wrote down that you said recovery is about clearing the clutter, listening to the universe, and doing the work. So what did that look like for you?
What it looked like for me was, and the mental clutter that was going on for me post after I got out of the recovery home that I went to, for homeless with mental illness. There was so much self-loathing and depression over it still. Like, I just, even though I knew I like was coming out of this, there was still a lot of fear, and that it was like I was forever going to be marked as, like a mentally ill person, and imagining like what that looked like. So but I kept going and I did what I needed to do. I like took acting classes and writing classes that through the community college here. And I started volunteering at an organization that for underserved neighborhoods to help tutor children after school, and they have all kinds of amazing workshops for the kids, writing and creative workshops. And so that started helping me like even more find my self-esteem, feel reacclimated into normal society, because I had been so, in this recovery center for like almost 2.5 years. And so that was great. But now I was on the outside again. So I kept up with my medication routine. I was so lucky. I know it's really hard sometimes to find a psychiatrist that you click with, right? And it's hard, but I had a psychiatrist who was actually on my treating team at UCLA. And then just by really a miracle or the universe, he ended up being the psychiatrist at the recovery home. And so when he met me there, he was like, "You may not remember me, but I was on your treating team at UCLA, and I'm familiar with what happened." And he was just such a help to me over the years, because he also would provide therapy sessions for me and see me after I got out of the recovery home. And so I just focused on making sure I stayed on my meds, because I knew that was helping. And not necessarily, so and then I wasn't pursuing writing or acting anymore. I kind of said, that's behind me. And then one of my close friends from when I was in my early 20s, I was like 23, 22. I met her at Actors Theater of Louisville. We were actresses down there together, and she moved back to LA. We knew each other in New York, because after that year in Louisville, I went back to New York. Like it was just, so she moved out here, and she was like, in the most loving way, she's like, "What do you mean you're not writing? What do you mean you're not acting?" And she just encouraged me so much. And she was like, you have to tell this story. She's like, "You have a story to tell that's gonna help people, and also help me, because I'm a creative person, and not doing that wasn't the best." I still wrote at home, but it was like I wasn't doing anything with it, and I didn't plan on it. I started doing like a neighborhood reading that's called Rorschach through this wonderful man, David Rockland. And I got started building a community with writers, but really it was the storytelling, when I got involved with true personal storytelling and meeting the community out in LA, just wonderful, kind, generous, beautiful people who encouraged me and accepted my story and didn't make me feel stigmatized. There's always the exception to the rule, but I'm saying like this is were really wonderful. So the storytelling was, so that got me there. And then it was clearing the clutter, listening to the universe, and doing the work. So that was the work I did, and listening to the universe. It would come in like increments, like little things would happen, and I'd be like, "Oh, wow, that really does feel like a miracle," or "I'm being kept safe," or there's this art exhibit at the Broad Art Museum by Kusama called The Infinity Room. And to me, that's the best example of what like an afterlife would be like. You walk in alone to this like tiny little black box of a room, and then the lights come on, and there are these like tiny little lights all over, and these mirrors that refract, and you get smaller and smaller like the lights, and it's all surrounding you. And it's called the Infinity Room. And it's, I was like in there, and I was just like, yes, everything is
Wow.
okay. Everything is okay. And that's what I tell myself when I panic. Everything's okay. There's the universe. There's an afterness of like collective energy, or that's what I believe.
Mm. You said a lot there, and I love the description of how it feels to be in a space where there is no stigma. It's just such an enormous breath of fresh air. And for some people, it's a theater community. For some people, it's NAMI. For some people, it's a different group. I had a friend who had a volleyball team, and that they just were very open-minded and a support network for her. But wherever you find your people, that's a beautiful thing.
Yes, I think that that's one of the challenges of having mental illness. It's so isolating. And
Yes.
yeah, it's so isolating, and finding community, really turns it around, like you said, in any form you can find it.
Absolutely. I meant to ask, how old were you when you were diagnosed? Like, where in your story did that happen?
I was diagnosed when I was 28.
Okay. So you had been in New York for a while at that time, is that right?
I've
Okay.
been in New York for like a decade.
Okay. Yeah, you've lived in some glamorous cities. Um, so shifting gears a little bit, you've mentioned in some of the presentations I've heard online your Jewish heritage, and talk about what that means to you.
Well, I one of all like my greatest memories from childhood would always be the holidays and spending time with my family, and mostly it's surrounded by food, which is very Jewish.
I
And
like
I
it.
just, yeah, and I just remember cooking all the special foods for Passover, and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, like kugel, which is like Jewish, like there's a noodle dish, and you can do a spinach one, or you can do like a sweet cheese one, and it's so good. Or I used to make cookies, my grandmother called, which I figured out as a kid was because her name was Sarah, and they were like special for Passover. And I also think that I complained a lot about having to go to synagogue, but in Judaism, storytelling is very much part of the service. You like the rabbi shares a story, and I always found that part really interesting. I always loved stories. Stories were always, I'd just be like, tell me a story. So,
So planted a seed, perhaps.
yes, planted the seed.
Mhm. That's neat. All right. And when did you become a teacher and a storyteller?
It was a process. When I first got out of the home, I was living on disability, Social Security disability. And then I didn't mention this, but I had experience working at hotels. So I started working at a hotel, and it wasn't for me anymore. But I stuck, I thought, like, I got to stick this out. This is what I'm supposed to do. But ultimately, I found my way to teaching, which was so great because I started volunteering at that nonprofit for tutoring. And then I was like, I want to do this as a job. So I started working at an after school, and then I started working as assistant for TK kindergarten. And then, yeah, the little ones. And yeah, and then I started teaching enrichment classes. I teach kids literature and creative and expository writing.
It must feel amazing to help a child find their creative voice. That I could see that being amazing.
It is so amazing. And like my mind is blown, like every class, I'm just like, we're reading, I gave them an assignment, fill your life is a blank page. How are you going to fill it? And, just hearing about their aspirations and them using their imaginations. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, and all the trust that children put in you, it's uplifting. It kind of, yeah, I can see that being a healing factor.
Yes. And, you don't have time to be in your own head about anything. It's just my focus is always on like, what's going to make them love to learn, what's going to make them a good citizen for the rest of their lives in this world, and be kind and, navigate the complexity of what having emotions is like, whether you have mental illness or you don't. Being a human is hard. So it's the education aspect, but it's also like the socio development, and teaching them about friendships and how to resolve conflict and what does I'm sorry mean. And yeah, I love it. I love it.
Aw, oh, bad. I can see it in your face. That sounds wonderful. Um, so for our last question, you've offered to tell a story, which is really exciting, and something different for our show. It's called The Harbor. So I'll give you the mic.
All right. Okay. It was 1993 and I was 17 years old and all my dreams were coming true. I was accepted to NYU. I left my dysfunctional family behind me and I moved from Philadelphia to Manhattan, determined to become a Broadway star. I received a piece of advice from a veteran New Yorker. They said, in New York City, be like an exclamation point, not like a question mark. And I took this advice to heart and I moved forward with my New York journey with enthusiasm and without doubt. And it wasn't long before it started to pay off. I was cast in one of the most esteemed play festivals in the country. I shot a short film in Amsterdam. I was having meetings with casting directors and agents and managers, and I was on my way. But then, after a decade of pursuit, I found myself not moving forward in my career. The opportunities and my confidence were drying up. And my boyfriend at the time, who I loved with every ounce of my being, he was a musician and his career began to take off and he was on the road all the time. And I was happy for him, but he was my main emotional support because I was estranged from my family and I took it hard. And I started isolating from my friends. But then, just when all seemed lost, I was cast as the star of a reality television show. And the executive producers were Madonna and Oprah. My life was being filmed and broadcast 24 hours a day live. I was very dedicated to delivering compelling television. I stood on street corners preaching about defeating evil political agenda. I pushed a shopping cart filled with trash that I had collected all around the city. And with this trash, I was going to build a huge art installation called Hoot Hoot, Don't Pollute. And I remember, exhausted from the constant 24-hour-a-day filming of my life, I remember lying down in the middle of a heavily trafficked intersection, calling out to the director to cut Cue the extras. I couldn't take it anymore because, see, I wasn't on a reality show. I was in the middle of a bipolar episode, and the show was a figment of my psychosis. My boyfriend broke up with me. I lost my job. I ran out of money, and I was evicted from my apartment. A friend out in Los Angeles offered for me to come stay with her. She didn't understand the full extent of what was going on with my mental health. And so I flew out west knowing the red carpet would be waiting for me. But not long after my arrival, my friend found me, having taken a fistful of tranquilizers and washed it down with a bottle of fine red wine. And she rushed me to the hospital where I was committed. And I spent 10 days there, my mood still bouncing high and low. A social worker found a recovery home for the homeless with mental illness for me to go. It was called the Harbor. At the Harbor, we had services. We had individualized therapy. We had group therapy. They took us on outings to the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And we had chores like cooking for the other residents. And I was really improving with these services. But let me tell you, it is extremely depressing finding out you're not famous. On this one particular night, it was my night to cook, and it was also shopping night. And Harriet, my favorite caretaker there, announced, "It's shopping time." And we all piled into the van. And I remember sinking low in my seat. I wasn't one of those people. I knew passerbys would all see us as a bunch of wackos. When we got to the market, I picked out the easiest things I could think of. And Harriet, my favorite caretaker, she encouraged me to try again, pick out something more special. And so as I pushed my cart through the supermarket, sane enough now to know what to do with this shopping cart, I began to feel nostalgic for my old life back in New York, the feasts I used to make for my friends and boyfriend. And I filled my cart. And when we got back to the harbor, I flipped on the radio station and I danced about to the oldies as I diced and I chopped, and the garlic sizzled in the pan, and the sauce thickened in the pot, and the peppers and the eggplant roasted to perfection. I was making penne della casa, penne of the house, a dish I had learned to make at the cafe where I had worked for 8 years before my mind began to unravel. I finished cooking just as the dinner bell rang. I laid the food out on the table for the residents, and we all took our seats. But without the activity of cooking, my mood sunk again. And I looked around at all these strangers, and I longed for my old life, for my friends who were having career success, getting married, having babies, while I was here stuck. And mental illness felt like a death sentence. And then I heard someone clear their throat, and I looked up and I saw it was Gary. Gary had a form of schizophrenia, and he had been chronically homeless. Gary announced, "Erica, this is like a 5-star hotel meal. Thank you." Gary's reaction was an awakening. I had been so focused on what I had lost. I was blind to what I had found: a new community and a second chance. It was 2.5 years spent in recovery homes. It's been 17 years since I left. It wasn't a straight line, but I slowly and gradually rebuilt my life. I volunteered, I made friends, and I became a teacher. And teaching has been a lifeline for me. When I walk down the halls and my students call out, "Hi, Miss Erica. Hi, Miss Erica," like I'm some kind of star and bound into my classroom, so eager to learn. I'm so grateful to have the privilege to guide them as they find their purpose in life. Sure, I may not be the star I had imagined all those years ago. It's taken another beautiful form. And when I worry that I'll have another breakdown, I remember the harbor. I remember Gary. I remember how my experiences there instilled an optimism within me, a rebellion against darkness, and the resolve to rejoice in my recovery, even on the darkest days. Thank you.
Oh, that is so powerful. I love the words rebellion against darkness. That's what it takes, isn't it? You are so talented. What a beautiful portrayal of a very difficult, complex journey. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was wonderful and powerful. Ah, and Sean Wellington in the chat box. Boom.
Thank you, Sean. Oh, that means a lot to me. John does great things for the mental health community.
Sean does. He's been a guest on our show here, and he's always out there getting people to share their stories. Comment from Mio, amazing Erica, you're so inspirational. Thank you for sharing your story. And a lot of similar comments. Powerful journey. You are a star to all of us and to the children you teach. So yeah, that was wonderful. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, so now we're going to pivot away from that, although I kind of hate to shift away from that. I kind of wanted it to go longer, but that was wonderful. So before we shift to our video of the week, though, I want to give a big shout out to the heroes working behind the scenes. We've got psychiatric nurse Gal Pruitt on the chat box and our wonderful intern Paulina Mendez on Facebook. And of course, our deepest thanks to Erica for sharing your talent and your time with us tonight. So now for our video of the week, we usually go with something kind of light, kind of fun. If I can get my cursor to jump to the right spot. Video of the week, this is our former mascot, Roxy the Beagle, and just kind of a fun moment here. Okay. All right, just a little pause. And yeah, so now we're going to take questions from Erica. She shared an amazing journey with us. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, you can type your question into the Q&A. It will magically appear to us. If you're on Facebook, type your question in the comments section and it will be delivered to us. So yeah, one question we'll start with is, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope? So much, even though it's been more difficult during the pandemic. Working with kids gives me hope. My loving friends give me hope. My best friend's dog, Coco, speaking of dogs, gives me hope. And yeah, I try and stay in gratitude. That's when I'm in the best place and the most hopeful.
Yeah, absolutely. I do my gratitude list many nights before I go to bed. It is a helpful exercise and practice. So we've got a lull in the questions right now. I'm going to make some quick announcements. Please fill out our survey at the end of the show. It helps us keep our grant funding and it helps us improve over time. Let Erica know what an amazing job she did. Join us next week for Thursdays with NAMI. We'll be talking to the founder of Josh's Hope Foundation. He had a son who was murdered by a group of young men after he struggled with mental illness, learning disabilities, and substance use disorder. The foundation he started provides job skills, woodworking, sculpture, camping, hiking, fishing activities, structure and support for young adults with challenges to help them get on track and build a life. So wonderful people that we'll be meeting with next week from Josh's Hope Foundation. And if you'd like to be a speaker on Thursdays with NAMI, fill out that survey and plug your information in. We'd love to have you. All right, question from Mike Flynn. Do you have any favorite authors?
Well,
And favorite films?
Mostly I read children's books these days, but I do love memoirs, my favorite genre mostly. And my favorite films, well, that's so hard. It feels like an online dating question, Michael Flynn. But you know what I just watched on Netflix that was fantastic was Made. That I thought it was really beautiful. I think the woman's journey and what she went through was really, really great to watch and learn about. I'll let me think a little bit more about favorite movies. It's so hard to choose. Okay.
Yeah, I think for someone who's been steeped in theater, that would be harder than.
Oh, I know. One of my favorite movies is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Like, I think that movie is so brilliant. So, so, so brilliant. I like movies that do deal with mental health. I love Frances with Jessica Lange, I think is a fantastic movie. It's a little it can be triggering, I know.
He's great though.
It is great. It is so great. And Girl Interrupted, also triggering, trigger warning. But I think it's really, I like seeing representation in film because I think people can learn from it.
Absolutely. Silver Linings Playbook was one of my favorites along those lines.
So good. Loved it. I love Jennifer Lawrence too as a person. She's funny. I'm not like into celebrity culture, but she's one celebrity that I think is very funny. And that's a fantastic. Yes.
Yeah. All right, next question from Susan. Do you have any worries regarding your employer discovering your diagnosis?
Yes. That was one of my hugest worries when I first started telling my stories. And then I just decided, oh, well, really, I was like, I want to tell this story. My need to do it for myself and my need to do it in the hopes that it could help break stigma and comfort people and educate people or whatever I'd figure it out. I'd just have to figure it out what to do.
I remember hearing you tell a story about a coworker of yours who, do you want to tell that?
Yes. Well, my friend and old coworker, Janet, who I worked with in TK and kindergarten, who is a beautiful human being. I hadn't told anyone at the school because I was nervous if parents found out. They would be scared or worried and that something could happen, and I hadn't told her for years and I felt like a liar. I felt like a phony and I felt because we were so close. And then just this one day, she was telling me about something personal in her own life that was a family member related to mental health. And I could see, like, I recognized the fear in her, and I wanted to reassure her. And so my desire to like be a good friend and also come clean, whatever you want to call it, just overcame me. And I said, I have bipolar disorder and I have quite a story. And she's been lovely, and she's a huge supporter. She watches my stuff, she listens to my podcasts. I worked with her for 3 years, and now it's been like 5 years, maybe 4 years since we worked together. And we're very close. I love her daughter, who's great, her husband. They make me feel like family. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, well, that was a courageous step. It's always scary to go out on that limb, but then it gives people permission, it gives people hope, and it gives people permission to see what's really happening in their own life. So I'm so glad you did that. And that's why we have these conversations, is to demystify mental health challenges. Because beautiful people like yourself, we all struggle. So from Gail, what is the most important thing you would like people with bipolar disorder to know?
I'm gonna get emotional. I'm gonna get emotional.
That's okay.
Don't give up. It's so hard not to. And remember, like, in the darkness of it, that there, like, you can get better. You can. It's not always going to be like that. It's hard to feel that way when in the darkness.
It sure can be. It sure can be. It's just hard to remember when you felt good. It's hard to believe it's possible to happen again.
Yes, I mean, I don't even know. I mean, it's not that profound. I mean, it's easier said than done, of course. Like, just remember, but what I do is I remind myself sometimes, or often, depending, that when I'm having a good moment, like, oh my God, what if my friend hadn't come home when she came home, and the pills and the wine did, overcome me? Or what if other times where I felt so lost in the dark, then I wouldn't be having this moment where I see my niece growing up. I wouldn't be having this moment, in the moments of light, trying to remind myself that, like, I'm glad that I'm still here. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure glad as well. We all are. All right. And what do you see as your future goal from April?
Well, I'm working on a memoir, and I'm also at the same time developing a TV show based on my experience. And I'm rewriting the pilot. I wrote a full pilot and then it didn't quite match my vision. So, but now I'm going back and rewriting it. And my goal is also, I had to go to the mental hospital, and my goal is to stay out of there. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that, but this is what I can say about mental hospitals, that if you really have to go, like, if it's time, and that's where it's important to go, because if to keep you safe. So I don't want anyone to feel like it's just a goal to not have an episode again. But if I do, I'll handle it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Just like if I had a heart condition or something, I don't want to go back, but I will if necessary. I just had this image of you having your show based on your memoir, and Madonna and Oprah are involved. That would be so fabulous.
That would be like, I couldn't even believe it. Yes, two idols of mine, two amazingly strong women who've accomplished so much.
I want them to make cameos. That's my vote. I'm sure that, yeah.
Definitely Oprah. I love Madonna, but she's an interesting character these days, but I still love her. I can't help it.
I do too. Hey, she lives her truth. So what else can you ask of anybody?
And she's such an ally for LGBTQ community, and she does a lot of good still in the world. So yeah, holiday, celebrate.
Uh, Express yourself. That was always my favorite to dance to back in the day.
Oh no,
That's
that
right.
was Vogue. But yeah, Vogue to express yourself was a good one too. Come on, girls. You can do this.
That's right. Did you ever have a different diagnosis or was it always bipolar?
um, yeah, it was, I think it was always bipolar. Yeah. Mhm. There was a point in my life where a doctor convinced me I had ADHD, but that's a whole nother long story. Yeah.
So common with that you get several diagnoses or try however many medications and then finally you kind of get the right blend, the right labels and the right blend and find your rhythm again. So yeah, it
Hmm.
takes time.
It does.
Um, and Slightly personal question. Did you ever reconcile with your family? Of course, you always have the option of passing.
Yeah. Um, I have a cousin, Nina, who actually is a lifesaver. She is my lifesaver. She's the one who bought my ticket to LA to help me get away from. She knew I was going to my friend's house. She didn't know the next part was going to happen. She sent me to a safe place, but she like she split the airfare on like 3 credit cards so she could help me get out there, and we're super close. And then I have another cousin, Beth, that I'm close with, who I love. And then my sister and I talk, and I love my mom a lot. And my dad's just super complicated. So I actually don't talk to my parents. I started texting a little with my mom again, which maybe something can happen. It's a package deal though. My father's very complicated, but I love my mom.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have support and like a lot of us, we have our family of origin and then we have our family of choice and we sort of weave together what we need to recover.
That's absolutely right. Because even if you don't have family, there's building friendships. That's, also why you know, I'm so grateful for all my friends, because it's great to have that support and just feel like safe. And if you're having a bad day, you can tell someone and they're going to understand, and be there for you. So mhm.
Right. That's right. So next question, how can I be happy with where I am now? A few years ago, I was in a better place. Physically, I was wealthier. I had a better future ahead of me.
Mhm. Today is today. Looking back only drags you down. And for me, it's mostly just staying grateful. So whatever, that's really the key. Like I wake up days and I think, oh, I lost everything, and why am I, this is where my life ended up. Why me? But I think harnessing like that like inner voice that just says, I am not going to let this control me. I talk back to it. I'm like, no, this is what I'm grateful for, this other thing I'm grateful for. And the pandemic has been a struggle for me. I gained a lot of weight over the pandemic, and it caused, and I've had, more anxiety. I'm already prone to anxiety. So, it's hard. I wish I had like, I wish I had the perfect answer. I guess it's just also think about like what's the most important thing, at the end of the day. Like, a lot of people, I live in LA, so money is like a thing, right? You know, and status. But I'm going to live my best life on my terms, and I'm going to make those terms and not feel less than because society is telling me I haven't made enough money or I have a disease, or I'm just not going to let it. Goodbye. I want to feel good. I want to have the best life I can have. And I'm just going to do my best to talk back to all of that.
I love that answer. I had a friend who was a therapist, and he asked me how I was doing once. And I said, oh, life is just pushing my buttons. And he said, Peg, push back. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say. And I think you're right. You can have an elegant, beautiful, creative life on different budgets in different places. And yeah, I really like your answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, what are your self-care go-tos during the pandemic? Speaking of the
Well,
pandemic.
good question. I take a lot of hot baths, which I feel guilty about because I live in LA in the drought, but we have rain this year and it really helps me. I take like a long hot bath every day. A lot of my coping skills have failed me, but I'm like doing better with them. I kept working towards it. Like it's getting better and better. You know, hiking, I try and do some yoga. I try to, what else do I do? My writing, I got involved in the Zoom community, like with Sean Wellington's, his name is Grit. And you can find, he has great events and made a community and all across the country. I even did mics in the Netherlands. So yeah, I mean on Zoom, but I was zooming to the Netherlands, and
Still.
so I just try to stay as busy as possible, like packing my life with the things that I love, which is writing, walking, spending time with my friends outside. um yeah.
I love that fresh air. Um, so yeah, that was a good question. Thank you, Paulina, for that question. From Debbie Flynn, words of thanks. You just put into words what I could not say for the past 6 years. I'm not sure what you were saying when she typed that, but it was 7:38 p.m. So we'll have to backtrack and replay the film and get to the bottom of that. Or I can ask her because she's my sister-in-law and an awesome friend. So
Yeah.
I think we've already covered self-care. From Gail, what could people in the helping profession have done better to help you get through?
Okay. You know, I actually, because we touched on this a little bit, but I think this is such a good question, about like how they sat me down and talked to me and were like, you don't want to go to Skid Row, like you don't want to do this, you need to stay here. I really, the social workers at the recovery home where I was were fantastic. Um, they just, I don't know, they were loving, they were helped encourage me, they helped me find all kinds of resources. I was really lucky that way. I did have a bump in the road with another social worker person that caused some issues for me, but I managed it. I took care of it. It was kind of out of the blue, and messed up the plan a bit, but that's okay because now I see it didn't mess up the plan. That was exactly the plan. So, but I will say that it's not an easy journey. I have struggled with finding therapists that I felt great with. I think sometimes if you have bipolar disorder, for a therapist to distinguish between like, I'm not symptomatic if I'm crying, I'm just a normal person having a bad day, you know? So that was a problem sometimes, or just but I think overall, at the recovery home, maybe because they were like really specifically trained to deal with crisis situations. They were great. Um, yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. And Paulina, what advice would you give to someone whose loved one is struggling with a mental illness?
I would just say that I understand that it's so hard to acknowledge that it's okay to have the own experience that you're having too, to acknowledge the anxiety and stress and fear and pain and everything that it's bringing up. And that the most, I mean, it's hard to do sometimes, right? But like, do your best to help them stay on their meds, do your best to love them, stick by them, find them resources, encourage them.
Yeah, I think that just continuity, just being there, sort of, that's what I'm hearing as sort of an underlying theme of what you're saying.
Yeah, the continuity, the stability of, yeah, just knowing that, I had a friend once who, anyway, I had a lot of friends who've done things, and I think that family just just stay there as much as you can, as much as you can be there for the person, but
Right,
still doing self-care.
right. Maybe set a boundary, but just let them know you're not going away.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting question from Diane Chrysanda. Do you plan to write children's books?
I was thinking about that the other day. Um, I was like, what are you going to write after you finish your memoir and your TV show? And I thought, oh, I know, I'll start writing children's books. But I've had ideas about, maybe, I love teaching, I love sea life and watching things about sea life with kids, because they're just like, so like, and it's beautiful and it's relaxing, and it's educational. But sometimes I think about writing about like a sea creature that deals with mental health issues. And one of the characters was going to be an octopus. And yeah, yeah, I like
I
octopus.
like that.
Yeah.
They ink when they're nervous or something like that.
Yeah, for some reason I'm blanking on the name, but there's this type of octopus, which I can't believe I'm blanking on the name. I'm sorry, but they're like shapeshifters. Like they can make themselves look like the sand floor. They can make themselves look like a sea snake. They can keep changing the way they look. And I was like, there's something in that too, with like identity and be, yeah, I don't know, to be continued, but thank you for asking that. I hope I do that one day.
Yeah, I hope so too. That sounds fascinating. It's a really good documentary called My Octopus Teacher, about a filmmaker who's going through this depression, and he and his son go to, oh, maybe the Netherlands, Norway, one of those very cold, beautiful countries. And he starts diving as just like he did when he was a child, and he becomes friends with his octopus. And it's, oh my goodness, it's one of those you'll laugh and cry movies. Do you have a podcast also from Diane?
Oh, cool. I'm just starting one up now because I'm not very technical. Like I can't, I'm not technical. So that was always the obstacle for me. But a friend who I've done other creative projects with over the years was like, hey, like, why don't we start up a podcast? So now I'm just in the process of it. Our plan is to do like have storytellers come on and tell a 5 to 6 minute story, and then have a talk back. And yeah, so mental health themed stories.
Oh, keep me
Mhm.
posted.
Okay.
I would love to know about that. Um, okay, so from April, how has the isolation with COVID affected you?
It has not been easy. It has not been easy. it's mostly that I felt lonely, which, even I felt lonely. I felt isolated again. But that's why I reached out and started doing as much Zoom things as I could do and trying to go out on walks and spend time with like a small, very small, like 3 people outside, and yeah, it hasn't been easy, but I'm still here. I'm still standing. So just trying to do the best I can do.
Yeah, I like that. Still standing. And kind of a similar question. What do you do to help yourself get through a rough time?
Um, Pretty much like I'm a big reacher outer to people because I learned that that really helps me. So I try, if I'm having like a really, really bad day, I mean, not everyone can talk, it's they're at work, but, fortunately I have built a lot of community through storytelling. And so I feel like, and what I also know is that if you're having the most horrible day and like everyone you're really close with is busy or can't talk to you, just keep reaching out to people and like say, I feel like don't feel good today. I feel like that. I don't know if that's like very uncomfortable to do, right? But I know that even if that person isn't super close with you, if you know them in a good context, like that. So reaching out to people, I try to reach out to people when I don't feel well. Um, and I like the same things that I said, the self-care, go for a walk, take a bath, make a gratitude, think about what I'm grateful for, write. That's what I do.
Yeah, I do a lot of those similar things. Journaling, I don't do very consistently, but it does really make a difference just to help me step back and have a different perspective, maybe a little less emotional perspective.
Mhm.
Yeah. This is an interesting question, again from Diane. As a teacher, have you had an interaction with children who have mental health challenges?
Hmm. Yes. And I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm like the dog, I'm like the whisperer.
I'll bet.
I'm like yeah, there is definitely a connection. And I think the kid can sense that I somehow get it. And I'm very patient. I'm very, very patient in general with children, but especially with children with special needs and challenges. And I think I understand like a lot of my mental health is like when I get activated. Like I get activated because there's so much going on, noises, talking, my own thoughts, stress, anxiety, pressure. And that's all day for a kid at school. So it's just a matter of learning how to like take a minute, let's talk about it. Let's go outside and take a walk and find a pine cone.
Aw, I love that. I'm going to write that down as my go-to thing. Take a walk and find a pine cone. I love that. I'll bet you're having a really profound impact on some of those kids because it's hard to find that adult who understands and is patient. And even if there's only one in your life, that's very powerful. So I'm so glad you're making that difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Where do you see yourself traveling to?
Ooh, I love that question. Well, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat, like with heights. Like I can do hikes in LA, but I have to be careful too. So like I would love to go places where you could like climb up mountains and get to like beautiful places, but I'm kind of a city girl. So I would love to go to Spain. I've never been to Spain. And I do want to go. I want to go everywhere. I want to go to Japan. Like Japan's on the top of my list. And I have my friend Mio is from Japan. And, she's told me beautiful things about it. And Where else do I want to go? Spain, Japan. I'd love to go to Italy. I'd love to go to Chile. I'd love to go. I can't really, yeah, anywhere you can imagine where I don't have to. I don't think I could ride up like mountains where you have to be on like a bus. That's the only thing I have to.
How about a
That
cable car?
no, I don't want to do cable cars either. But I'm conquering it. It's a little, I still, yeah, I have a little bit of a fear of heights. So yeah.
There are a lot of other cool places a lot of beaches and beautiful cities. So
Oh yeah. Beaches. Oh, Hawaii, Turks and Caicos. Yeah, let's go. Let's all book a trip.
I'm in. Do you have a favorite pastime?
I mean, my really writing. That's what I do all day long. Writing is my favorite pastime.
Creative. And last movie that we have right now, our last question right now. Have you seen the movie Homeless to Harvard?
No, I want to see it.
It's a good movie. It's a Lifetime movie about a young woman who's homeless in high school. Towards the end of her high school years, her parents have mental illness, and she just takes care of herself. She washes up in bathrooms, and she rides the subway a lot, and ends up getting a scholarship to Harvard with an essay that talked about her experience being homeless in high school. Yeah, that is a really good movie. Thank you, Diane, for that question. So again, I'm going to do some quick reminders, announcements. If you have another question, you still have time to type it in if you act quickly. Please join us next year or next week, not next year. We'll be talking with the founder of Josh's Hope Foundation, Stephen Bailey, and his program director, Trip Jarvis, both wonderful people who are doing some amazing things for young adults in North Carolina. Please fill out our survey when you leave the Zoom session. Survey will magically appear, just a few quick questions, and that'll help us improve over time and help us keep our grant funding. Also, if you'd like to be a speaker, join us here on Thursdays with NAMI and tell your story. You can type that into the survey, kind of two birds, one stone, and we'll reach out to you and set something up. So yeah, do you have any closing thoughts to share with us, Erica?
I'm just so happy to everyone, happy for everyone that listened, and I'm grateful to you, Peg. This has been fantastic, and I just, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and people reach out. Let's be friends.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, I like that. Okay, let's commit to that. And I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Thank you again so much to Erica Blumfield for sharing your story and your talent with us. It was a really special conversation. Remember out there, if you're struggling, you are not alone. You're not alone. Even if it feels that way, please call our helpline, join a support group, let us know what's going on. We understand here at NAMI. Thank you for being part of our conversation on mental health and recovery, and have a great night. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Erica.